Go. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining JP Progressives tonight for our talk, which is called Life as a Federal Worker, a chat with Katherine Royce. We are excited to have everybody here. Just quickly, I think most folks here are fairly familiar with JPP, but if you are, for some reason, new to us, if you somehow didn't get here through our usual email group, I'll just say that JPP, Jamaican Plain Progressives, is a group of JP residents. We work together to organize our community around progressive candidates and progressive issues. We do issues-based forums, campaigns dedicated to electing candidates who share our values, and campaigns to advance the public good in general. And we are made up entirely of volunteers. We are reliant on volunteers and activists who seek to work with us and to build the organization in our community. So if you have any interest in joining us, feel free to reach out to us. Our email address is moreinfo@jpprogressives.com. People participate in many ways, attending the forum and reading our emails, all the way up to joining various campaigns or even being on the steering committee. We also have other organizational committees that you can join if you're so interested. So with that, I will say welcome, and welcome especially to Kate Royce, who is our speaker this evening. Kate is was/is an attorney with the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. And she's going to speak to us tonight sort of about the very strange way in which it is to live in DC right now as a federal worker, with the massive slash of the workforce and then some of the weird rehire situations as well. I'll just go ahead and I will turn it over to Kate, because I feel like she's going to explain much better that scenario than if I did some sort of introduction. So Kate, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Well, great. Thanks for having me, Krista. Thanks to everyone who's taking time out of their evenings to hear about our plight here in DC. Yeah, as Krista said, I have spotlight.
Just made you big. So.
As Krista said, I am a recent law school graduate. I graduated from Harvard Law in May, so not quite a year ago, as crazy as that sounds, and moved down here to DC to start as an attorney in the Enforcement Office of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So I know there's a lot going on in JP, in Boston, in the world right now. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear my little slice of it. So without further ado, hopefully this doesn't screw up the spotlight too much, I will start sharing my screen. So
yeah, that seems to work.
Please give me a thumbs up or something in the chat if you can see this, because I've put a lot of work into it. I put some work into it, and I would be sad if you couldn't. All right, so before I get started here, I want to clarify that this is just my ethics disclaimer, because there are still people in the federal government governed by ethics codes, that I'm appearing in my personal capacity, and that nothing I say here should be construed as the official position of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So please do not construe it thusly. All right. So I first wanted to talk a little bit about what the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is, because a lot of people, as I'm discovering, aren't really sure who we are or what we do. Basically, we are the nation's consumer watchdog. We were created by our good friend Elizabeth Warren in the aftermath of the financial crisis to prevent another one, to serve as the advocate for people who were too poor or too poor to hire their own lawyers, to fight back against unfair, deceptive, or abusive financial practices. In the, 10, 11 years since we've been founded, we have returned $21 billion back to consumers. And importantly, we do not draw from the annual appropriations budget. You might have recalled a whole bunch of Supreme Court cases about that. We draw our budget from the Federal Reserve, from the contributions of the banks we regulate. No taxpayer money goes to our salaries. I mention these two facts because, as you might be aware, the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, not a real department, not authorized by Congress in any way, shape, or form, not elected, has put us, I think, first and foremost in its crosshairs. And I just want to put on the record that we have an excellent track record of efficiency and cost consciousness in serving the American people. All right. I should mention that this is a random stock photo from back in the day. The lovely little letters you see here spelling out our name have now been taken away. They were stolen in the dead of night after we were all told not to come back to our office. But the bureau itself is still there. All right. Oh, I need to click to change things. Okay. So you might recall from the last election that Project 2025 was kind of a big campaign plank of the Republican Party. A lot of the people that were hired into the current administration worked on this plan. One of them is this guy seen here, presumably glaring daggers at puppies and babies and kittens. His name is Russell Vogt, and he was quoted back in October telling an undercover reporter, actually, that we want to, quote, put them in trauma, referring to federal employees. Federal employees writ large are part of, we basically give force to the laws that Congress writes. Sometimes Congress says, okay, there should be less pollutants in the water. There should be more financial regulation. We're not experts in that. We want to delegate some of that power to federal agencies so that they can fill in the details. That's our role. That is what we do. We do it professionally. We do it in a nonpartisan fashion. And many of the older attorneys I learned from had dedicated decades of their life to this work. But some in the Project 2025 universe wanted or saw that as an improper check on presidential power. And so we get this desire to view us as the villains, to get us demoralized, to traumatize us, and stop us from doing our constitutionally mandated jobs. So that everything I say in the next couple of minutes, I want you to visualize this guy sending the emails that I'm about to show you. All right, so back in October, Russell Vogt said he wanted to traumatize us, and in the week of February 10th, he was confirmed as he wasn't confirmed, he was appointed as our acting director on over the middle of the weekend on February 8th. On the Monday of that week, he sent out the email that I have shown here, saying that we should not perform any work tasks. By the way, I'm not going to share any internal emails or things that are not in the public record tonight. This has been publicly filed in court in a case that I will talk about in a bit. But basically, that first week that DOGE and Elon Musk and Russell Vogt and the rest of these Project 2025 people came into the Bureau, they basically said, we don't care about congressional mandates. We don't care about what the law tells you actually have to be doing, like supervising banks or publishing data or answering the hotlines that consumers call for help. Just stop all of that. Don't do anything. Stand down. Don't come into the office. We'll let you know if anything changes. So that was Monday, February 10th. Then we come to Tuesday, February 11th. I remember this day very well because we were all sitting around not doing anything as we'd been ordered to do. And then in the middle of the evening, so people were eating dinner, people were hanging out with their families, All the probationary employees, which is basically the people who had just been hired, who were in their first year or two of service, got an email like the one you could see on the right here. This is literally the email that a lot of my friends got. It says, memorandum for employee first name, employee last name, performing a job title in a division. They didn't even bother to do the mail merge correctly. It was just a rushed, get these people out the door as soon as possible. Let's try to dismantle this agency as soon as we can. So obviously all of the like employee group chats that I was in started popping off, as you might imagine. And it turned out that we really put together an employees group. We really quickly put together an employees Zoom chat with all the probationary employees to just kind of vent and figure out what we were going to do next. A lot of us had, we were worried about health insurance. We were worried about possibly moving. We were worried about gathering unemployment benefits and the documentation that we'd need for that. And eventually someone was like, well, not every day you get fired. I'm going to break out my canned rosé. And then someone else was like, it's not every day we all get fired. So I'll break out our canned rosé. And although we did not all have canned rosé, it was a good time on the Zoom in a very depressing way. So that night, I think about 200 employees got fired. In exactly the way you can see here. Memorandum for employee first name, employee last name. You have been removed from your position of job title on appointment date. As you might imagine, that is an extremely demoralizing and infuriating email to receive. So some of my friends got that email on Tuesday. We were all illegally stopped from work, so there's nothing else to do. I decided, oh, I'm going to throw a little mulled wine get together on that Thursday, make sure everyone's still doing okay, be able to see one another in person because we weren't going to the office. So I went out to the Wegmans. I got a couple of bottles of wine. I put some spices in it. Invited all my friends over, and then as we were mulling our wine and eating our cheese, my phone buzzed. And the night before Valentine's Day at 7:06 p.m., as you can see here, I also got fired from my job as a term employee because I had been hired to a 2-year term fresh out of law school. All right, so it is Valentine's Day. 200 out of, I think, 1,200 total employees, 1,200, 1,700, something like that, have been fired. This is when the union really sprang into action. That, like midnight on Valentine's Day, so that very early morning, we filed a lawsuit in federal court saying this violates the separation of powers because Congress set this agency up. It was established by an act of Congress. The only way you can kill it is through an act of Congress, and we haven't seen one yet. And we basically went to federal court. We asked the judge, hey, please stop what's going on until we get a chance to figure out if this is constitutional. As it turned out later, the judge was able to issue a temporary restraining order that day. Turns out that that was actually the only thing that stopped them from firing everyone on Valentine's Day. They were, as revealed later in court documents, the plan was to basically riff, the federal government term for a reduction in force, to fire up to 1,000, 1,200 or 1,200 employees on Valentine's Day, which I just think is, the icing on the cake there. All right, so that is where it stood as of Valentine's Day, but then we started fighting back. We filed the federal court case, but more importantly, I think we got out on the streets. So every week since that first week, second week in February, there has been a CFPB picket outside our headquarters where we have been demonstrating outside the building, now no longer labeled as the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And we have been asking to do our jobs, to fight for the American consumers, to obey the laws that we all took an oath to uphold. As you can see from the headline on the left, we have seen some success. The union and the collective actions we did bought ourselves the time through pushback, through organizing, through developing evidence to see some wins in federal court, to get injunctions, stop orders against more firings, and to get more oversight where it's not just some 20-something tech bros running through our data and deleting contracts and causing havoc, but actually people who know what federal law is having some oversight over what's going on. All right. And I copied this headline. This is a literal quote from the article, which I just think is the funniest thing ever. Because people have been trying to come after the CFPB for a long time. We have done, I think, more than many other federal agencies with less. And so it is funny to see that being acknowledged in the paper of record, as it is here. Case in point, once we started pushing back, we started seeing results. So I was lucky. It only took them a week to rehire me. Weirdest week of my life, I gotta say, because I would just wake up and think, oh my God, I don't know where I'm going to be in a month. I don't know how I'm going to get there. I just don't know anything. So they sent me this email rehiring me, saying it was all an error on February 20th, so a week to the day after my mulled wine party with all of my coworkers, where we had all gotten fired. And if you see here on the bottom left, they apologized for the error, so that was nice. And so that brings us through March and now into April. We are still fighting back. The union had made a hardship fund for the employees who were facing, termination of their health insurance, having to move, or even just the uncertainty of living in a high-cost area without a job suddenly. One of the items that we were selling for fundraising was, in fact, this "Hello, my name is employee first name" mug, which I personally think is hilarious. So we are still out here. We have not, I think, have only gotten stronger. We are part of the National Treasury Employees Union, NTEU 335. But we are partnered with a lot of different unions throughout federal agencies. And increasingly, we're starting to see partnership from unions, just of people who are concerned about what's going on. So I like to think of this as the lights are still on, right? They started flickering for a bit. We kept them on. No one's in the office anymore. People have been fired. People are taking early retirement or choosing to look for other work. Out of the 8 honors attorneys who joined out of law school with me, I think 3 of us are left holding down the line. I have chosen to stay as long as I can because I know if I leave, my job is not getting filled again. And I personally think that one of the quickest ways to really hamstring a federal agency, not just for one presidential administration or 1 year, but really for the next couple of decades, is to take out all the young talent, the people who were really excited about the work, the people who came out of law school or grad school or college and really wanted to get involved in public service, to just smother them in the cradle, basically, and take out that pipeline of talent that should be nurturing the government for decades to come. So I've chosen to stay as long as possible. I realize that not everyone can or wants to make that stand, but I think that it is important that someone do so. And hey, it's not like I've got anything else to do right now. Okay, so that's about where we are. We've got a couple court cases in the pipeline. We've got some favorable orders, some not so favorable. Of course, they're all getting appealed. So that's kind of where we're at now. But I do want to kind of pivot a bit from my experience as a federal employee and maybe talk about some lessons that I think anyone who is interested in organizing for progressive change um, can draw from what's happening to us. Um, so first off, the direct actions we took. So the union employees who did our jobs by going up to random people in headquarters who didn't have any ID, who didn't have any signifiers that they were supposed to be there, and saying, hey, what are you doing here? Are you an employee? Would you like to join our union or learn more? That innocent little question itself was enough to scare them. This interaction actually made it into a declaration that was later walked back under threat of perjury. Because this was the DOGE crew saying, oh, we were super scared by my coworker who was a mom with her child, just following them around saying, hey, what are you doing here? I can't see your ID. We're all supposed to have IDs. Please show me that there's a reason you're here. They weren't able to do that, but they went to federal court and whined about it. So I take from the fact that this really just innocuous interaction of union employees tabling in the front lobby and then asking random strangers who were somehow in a secured federal building, hey, what are you doing here? Those tiny little actions themselves, something anyone can do, was enough to make them start second guessing, change up their plans, um, and start, if not abiding by the law, trying to make gestures to the law's existence. So I think that's the first thing I wanted to put on the table, that our experience here has shown that it might not seem like a lot. Oh, that was not where it was supposed to go. It might not seem like a lot. It's as easy as following the policies that your workplace has set out. But any random person can make a difference in subverting an unconstitutional scheme. And I think that's a really empowering thing to know. But I also wanted to draw your attention to the timeline here, because this started the first week of February. We noticed the DOGE staff in the building. We asked them, hey, what are you doing? Have you heard about our union? Please show us some authority to be here. Then we set up a picket outside headquarters on that Saturday, just to say, hey, we know what's going on. We would like to continue doing our jobs as Congress has told us to do. And that was February 7th and 8th. A couple days later, we were able to get a temporary restraining order stopping more firings from happening. I don't know why that says filings. That's the danger of not proofreading your slides, but more firings. And then that next weekend, we tried to get Elizabeth Warren out for the first one. She couldn't make it, but she brought the whole squad to another rally outside headquarters. That was when we first got to see some media attention, and people really began to realize we're not going down without a fight. Then again, on the left-hand side, we kept asking all of our members, please provide any proof of orders that go against other policies, that go against laws, of supervisors asking you to do one thing over email and then telling you to do something else, not in writing. And we were able to use that evidentiary basis to get the preliminary injunction, to get fired employees reinstated, to make that official change that no one, I think, really expected coming in. Because I think they were not expecting us to have as strong a union and to be as committed to our work as we turned out to be. We've been picketing every week. That's not going to stop anytime soon. And even as we start getting, some reversals on appeal, some clarifications on appeal, and DOGE starts figuring out how to implement their so-called government efficiency program in a vaguely legal way. We are still fighting. We are still trying to ensure that we can do the jobs that provide for the American people, that protect against another financial crisis as best we can. So I want to close by talking about some of the lessons that I have taken away from this. This is NTEU, National Treasury Employees Union, out at the hands-off protest on April 5th on the Mall. We had a great banner, great turnout. We sang some songs, really good energy, even though it was kind of a grim day, weather speaking. So I wanted to close by talking about how this applies to you, because I think one of the things I have realized as a federal employee, excuse me, is that we're kind of the canaries in the coal mine for what an administration might do with unlimited power. Because if you think about it, the administration is our employer. In many cases, it's our landlord. There are less restrictions to a president acting aggressively towards federal employees than there are for those same actions against, say, private employees. For example, federal unions can't strike. So I think it's useful to study what happened and what continues to happen to federal workers, because I do believe it's a blueprint for what might happen to private employees, people who aren't working directly for the government, but nevertheless are perceived to be impeding executive mandates, whatever that is determined to be. So I have 3 lessons I've kind of taken away from this. The first is that it's really up to us. This is a picture of my friend Gabe giving a little speech or leading a chant, I honestly forget which, at that same rally. You can see me, I'm kind of behind the ear here in the leather jacket holding up the banner. I was very proud I got to lead the march. It was a good time. We were the ones, this was all happened from bottom-up pressure. The rank and file employees of the union said, hey, we need to hire some really good lawyers. We need to have a national rep here to help us. We got that. That national rep and their good lawyers filed a great lawsuit. And we've seen some positive effects from that. But really, all the change we have seen has come from the bottom up. It has been me and my friends and my coworkers deciding, hey, it's 40 degrees and raining, but we have some things to say. We're going to go out and picket. We're going to go up to those suspicious looking guys in our building without any name tags and ask them innocently, hey, what's going on? Not trying to intimidate, not trying to subvert the will of the president, just trying to make sure that our building and the confidential data we have there is secure. So every victory we have gotten here has been the result of our union, of our coworkers, of regular people who up until January I'd just seen like at the water cooler or at the coffee break, deciding, hey, this is important to me. I took an oath to uphold the Constitution. I am going to make sure that my actions agree with that oath, even if I can't do it for anyone else. And that has been really motivating to see. Second thing I want to draw out from this is that pickets are fun. Going out and yelling with a bunch of your friends about things that make you mad is actually really cathartic. This is a picture of me the first day I was in charge of the picket line. So I got there early, I set up. Of course, as you can kind of see, it was 40 degrees and raining, so it was very cold. But I still had a great time. It is really motivating to see that there are other people who are similarly mad and about the same issues as you are. And while obviously protests and pickets and getting out in the street is not everything there is to making change, I think it's a good start. I think that the way I've been trying to explain it to people is that going to the picket every week or drawing out a sign or just going out there to see what happens. It's like going to the gym and building your muscles. It is building the protesting muscle that says, hey, this is a normal thing to do. This is something I can do. This is something that I want to do. And hey, maybe next time I'll bring a couple of my friends. My mom is actually going to be in town this weekend, and we are going to go out picketing together on the weekly picket, and that is going to be a great time. So I would really encourage anyone who has not already been to one of those big demonstrations, like the one on the Common on April 5th, or I think there's another one coming up on April 19th. Those are really fun, and I think it's a good way to get more involved in what's going on without making a huge commitment, testing the waters to see if that level of activism is right for you. The third thing I really want to emphasize here is that there is a particular joy that comes from solidarity. So what does that mean? Solidarity to me means, well, I might not agree with these people on everything, but they're coming out here for me, so I have to come out here for them. This is a picture from that rainy Monday picket that I led a couple of weeks ago. Half of the people you see here are not CFPB employees. They're retirees who were in town, who checked Mobilize, who said, hey, this is something that's important to me. I want to go out there and support them. You can also see the guy on the right there has a Union Ironworkers shirt. His name was David. He was in town from Dayton, Ohio to go to a national conference for his Ironworkers Union. He saw the event on Mobilize and he was like, hey, other unions are protesting. I got to go support them. So seeing other people, who weren't necessarily directly affected by losing their jobs or losing their health insurance or worrying about their paychecks, seeing them come out and say, hey, this is important. I know you'd have my back if I were out here, so I'm going to have yours now that you're out here. That has been really encouraging and actually quite moving to see. I don't think there were certainly not that many classes in Harvard Law School where they suggested that, or rather, the way I'm going to say this is I think many of my classmates who went on to, prestigious clerkships or fancy law firms did not see a path in their career for picketing with ironworkers. And I think that is their loss because there is really a kind of ferocious joy in knowing that whatever we might have some differences on policy, we might have some differences in the way we live or what we like to do with our free time. But when it comes to workers' rights, we are going to have each other's backs no matter what. So I'm only more committed to finding and nurturing that kind of solidarity now. All right, so I think my closing message is that we don't work just for us. We are your attorneys. No one, one of the first cases I worked on was in the auto and student loan supervision division, where, sometimes we'll see that someone's charging a $50 late fee on a payment that they shouldn't be charging. Okay, that's bad. No one's going to sue over a $50 late fee. That's just too expensive for most normal people, especially people for whom $50 is the difference between maybe feeding their family and keeping the lights on, or having to make that kind of impossible choice. So the only lawyers who are going to take these companies ripping people off to court over $50 are my colleagues at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We're the only ones who are there on your side in every financial moment, from your student loan to get to college to your retirement. And a legal stop work order that says, hey, we're going to keep paying you, just don't do any of this work. Don't show up for the American consumer. Don't prosecute any of these fraudsters and bad guys. That is a theft from you. And we have been doing everything in our power over the last 10 weeks to try and make that better. We are still on life support. We still don't know what the future of this agency is going to look like. But I think we have definitely become stronger as a union, and we will not stop fighting anytime soon. With that, I will stop sharing and I would welcome any questions.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, then please, there's the raise your hand function, or just turn on your screen and raise your hand. And I'll call on folks. Enid.
Thank you, Kate. It was great to hear your perspective, and it was great to hear about how you and your co-workers are becoming radicalized by what the federal government is doing. I'm a long-term union organizer, staffer for SEIU, but I'm just curious because I went to the federal workers rally here a couple of weeks ago on a Friday afternoon. It was really miserable, but there were very few workers there, and that was kind of interesting to me. And I feel like there's been good, where I've tried to work with a Social Security local, which I know is not NTUU. I think it's an AFG local, about doing support at the Social Security offices. And I feel like I'm just more curious what your take is, because legal action is not going to win this. The Supreme Court is going to screw you. It just, like Trump took away the right for the TSA employees in one fell swoop. 50,000 people lost their union. So I feel it's radical action. And I'm just curious from your perspective what people are thinking about, because it requires everybody to save the union, and it is canaries in the coal mine. So just kind of curious, what is the conversation about long-term survival here as the union?
Well, that's a great question, Enid. So we have kind of been confronting this in big and small ways over the last couple of weeks. The first is that, hey, some people are starting to go to work, so we can't, take off 2 hours in the middle of a Monday to go picket. We changed our weekly pickets to Saturday afternoon to try and get more people who were still available. But to your larger point about, attrition, in our case, administration just saying this union can no longer exist in this federal sector, it's a big threat. I think my hope, I don't know how realistic this is that they can't get all of the unions. So even if the air traffic controllers get their strike broken, even if our union goes down, even if there is no more, like they do reduce the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to, quote, 5 guys and a phone, which is what their plan was as of January, there will still be people out in the streets. There's still going to be AFG, there's still going to be SEIU. And even if that fails, unless things get really bad, you can still scrawl something on a piece of cardboard, go out to the common, and make your voice heard. So yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's scary looking at the fundraising numbers because many of our dues paying members have moved on to other jobs. And one particular organization might not survive. But I don't think the overarching strain of, okay, now I know how to organize a picket. Now I know how to get people mobilized on a weekend. Now I know who in the office is really fired up about this. That's not going away. That's not a feeling that any law can constrain. So even if one particular form of a union is prohibited or its members are fired, I think that fighting spirit, for lack of a better word, is not going anywhere, even if the particular alphabet soup that designates a particular union is somehow struck down.
Okay. Does anybody else have a question? You can put it in the chat if you don't feel comfortable turning on your screen or anything like that. I have a question. if nobody else has one. I was just wondering, it's so lovely to hear you talk so passionately about your union involvement. I'm wondering, were you already quite involved in the union, or is this something that has ramped up, I guess, in the situation you find yourself in?
So that's a great question. I have only been on the job for, I think, 7 months. I did like signing up for the union was one of the first things I did with my first paycheck. But I would say I wasn't like heavily involved in, knowing who was on the organizing committee and being in all these organizing group chats until things really started to hit the fan in February. And that week we did see like the membership numbers just skyrocket because people realized if I'm going to be fighting for my job, I don't need to be fighting alone. I will say that the CFPB union has been one of the more active federal employees unions, and that's going back to I think under our first director that got started. So we've been in the relatively privileged position of being able to offer expertise to maybe newer unions who are just trying to form or who are just going through the process of negotiating their first bargaining agreement with the government. So yeah, I would say I definitely wasn't expecting to be as involved as I was. I don't also, none of us were expecting it to be as bad as it got, as quickly as it did. But I will say that, everyone in my family, like 3 generations back, has walked on a picket line at some point. So the first thing I did when I was entering the workforce was I wanted to make sure that I was involved in a union, even if I wasn't expecting to necessarily go out leading the picket line. And just to respond to Ian's question in the chat,
Yeah.
yes, for those of us who are still getting paid, they are still deducting our dues, but people have had to be like watching their paychecks like hawks because some people got reinstated and had their benefits. There was wonky stuff going on there. So it's something we have our eye on.
Is that something you want to speak to too? I know you had concerns around health insurance issues when you first lost and then regained your job. Did you regain your health insurance right away, or was that something you had to poke at them a bit to get back?
So I was relatively lucky in that it didn't even take them a full pay period to realize their, quote unquote error in firing me. So I was able to continue pretty much uninterrupted, other than, all of the shall we say, earthquake in my personal and professional life that I had to do with reorganizing like healthcare appointments and figuring all of that out. One of my coworkers had she had to pay, I think, $8,000 out of pocket for a medication she needed every month because between the government bureaucracy hiring and refiring her and the healthcare bureaucracy trying to get their paperwork in order, it took her a while to be reinstated and she was just out for a couple of months, but I got relatively lucky, thankfully.
Martha.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how you all or what you all are doing to get the word out about the Consumer Protection Finance Bureau. I talk to a lot of people who don't really know about you. I think you're like one of the most exciting, bureaus in federal government. I mean, it's really cool, but I think it's obscure for lots of people, so they don't know what they're in the process of losing.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, Martha, because I think one of the reasons is we're just so new. I was, 11 when the Bureau started, so it's been around for half of my life. But for anyone who's not in Gen Z, it's just kind of this newfangled, like, oh yeah, that was a response to the financial crisis. But I think it's a super valid point. Yeah, I have been surprised by just how little people actually know about what's going on. But the way I like to explain it to people, and you can steal this to explain it to your friends if you would like, is, if you have a credit card, we're on your side. If you have a mortgage, we're on your side. If you have an auto loan, we're on your side. Student loans, retirement planning, like all of these things. There are a lot of financial traps out there or just, confusing things. And I know I've studied financial law for 3 years in law school. I was a math major before that. I've been doing this for 7 months. I still get confused when talking about some of this stuff. So I can't imagine what it's like for people who have not, made it their life's work.
Well,
Our
I'm
job,
curious about social media. Are you using that at all?
we do have a Blue Sky account, and we don't have an X account because, there's some stuff going on with X these days. But we do have a Blue Sky account. I think it's just CFPB NTEU 335. I'll send it out later, which I have been posting to fairly regularly. I think, yeah, it's definitely a struggle. And I think what's probably the hardest in this is that none of us signed up to be government attorneys to be like on the front lines and, leading a march and giving big speeches. We signed up for, making positive change in people's lives behind the scenes. One of the things my first supervisor said that really stuck with me was that, most people don't know we exist, but sometimes they get checks in the mail, and that's because of us. And that helps me sleep at night. So I agree. I think we do have a PR problem. I think and this is not just the CFPB. I think people don't know how much federal employees and federal services do in their lives. I was reading a great study about like how many billions of dollars Massachusetts stands to lose if he claws back all of the funding that he's threatening. Oh, Krista's put it in the chat, our social media account.
Yeah, I found it quick.
So I think it's really vital for people to come hear federal workers, employees stories. So thank you all, and to just realize like, oh, the infrastructure that supports a lot of the things we take for granted in our daily lives. So whether that's the postal service, whether that's libraries, whether that's clean air and water, whether that's a safe financial marketplace, that's all undergirded by federal workers, by people who saw protecting the environment or the financial marketplace or delivering post as a calling. Because they thought there was something in the idea of a public good and they wanted to be part of that. That mindset does not really lend itself to pushing to the front of the crowd and saying, hey, I'm important. But it has, I think, provided a lot of stability to American people's lives over the last couple of decades. And I fear, actually, that people are starting to discover how important it was only when it's being taken away.
So I just wanted to say thank you for doing this because I honestly thought it was gone completely. I didn't realize it was there. I didn't realize any part of it was still functioning. And I remember when it was set up, and thank God for Elizabeth Warren, and also thank God for Michael Lewis. You probably are familiar with his work. The book that just came out, a tribute to federal workers.
Oh, I haven't. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, it's good. It's his second book about federal workers, actually.
Someone out there cares about it, so we love to see it.
So thank you for your service.
Thank you. I mean, thank you for coming out and trying to support us and hearing more about this, because I honestly think, like I said, we're not comfortable being out in the spotlight. So it's going to be people just telling their neighbors, hey, I had like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau helped me resolve this complaint I had against my credit card issuer. They can do that too. But yeah, so we are still here. The letters on our office are not, but we are. And I think I am more confident than I was in February that once the dust is settled, once everyone has had their say, there will be some form of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau left standing. I am not at all confident that I will still be allowed to be part of it, because I frankly think as a probationary employee, I'm the first out the door. That's actually written into the RIF procedures, but whatever. But yeah, we are still here. We are still fighting. We will do that as long as we can.
Monica, I think I found the book you're talking about. I dropped a link in the chat there, and you can tell us if that's the one you're referencing. It's Who
I'm
is
on my
Government?
iPad. I can't see anything.
Oh, okay. You said
It's
Michael
called
Lewis.
Who is Government?
The
Who is
Untold
Government?
Story
The
of
first
Public
book,
Service. So,
the first book was called The Fifth Risk. And this
okay.
book that just came out is Who is Government?
Yeah, that's the one. So if
Yeah.
anyone is interested, I happen to have a window open and pulled that up. But does anybody else have any other questions for Kate while we're still here? Okay. Otherwise, I mean, I think I recognize everybody here, and I think everybody is already on our JPP email list. But if not, I do have a sign up. If you would like to join it, I will throw it in the chat now. And you can share that with friends too. Unfortunately, I need to update the language on there. That was the language we put up when the pandemic was full underway. So we do things like meet in person now and not just via Zoom. Obviously Zoom today since Kate is in DC, but we're so excited that Kate was able to come speak to us. I'm going to, as long as that's all right with you, Kate, share this recording. Probably, if not in our next email, sometime shortly after that. It depends on how long it takes YouTube to process it properly for us. But because I think this was a really fascinating discussion, and I hope more folks will take the opportunity to tune in and hear what you have to say. And I'll just point out that Hope said earlier in the chat that she feels empowered just listening to you talk about the CFPB's fight to retain its existence. And I want to echo that. I feel the same way. And I'm really pleased that you could join us tonight. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for organizing, and thank you everyone for coming out. We're all going to keep going together, and that's how we're going to get through this. So thanks.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks. Thank
Bye.
you.
Night.